Spider-Man was never meant to be one of Marvel's strongest heroes, but the harder he holds back, the more terrifying his true strength actually becomes. And by the end of this, you'll understand why Spider-Man's real power isn't something he's ever allowed to fully use. Level 1. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Spider-Man's first level of strength isn't about how strong he is, it's about how strong he refuses to be. This is his baseline, the strength he uses every single day, subconsciously placing a hard ceiling on his own potential. At this level, Peter Parker is constantly holding back, not just pulling punches, but actively restraining himself so the people he's fighting can still walk away afterward. He's not trying to end lives, all that matters is that the bad guy is stopped and handed over to this system. This is the strength behind the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man image. It's the version of Spidey lifting a car just long enough for a kid to grab a football. The same level he uses against nameless thugs robbing banks, hijacking armored trucks, or causing chaos in places like Grand Central Station. And you can tell he's holding back because this is at the only level where Spider-Man still has room to joke. The quips, the sarcasm, the constant running commentary mid-fight, that's not confidence, that's restraint. Because Spider-Man knows something most people forget. His strength, even at its lowest setting, is more than enough to cave in a human skull. But that's never been Peter Parker's goal. With great power comes great responsibility, and level 1 is what responsibility looks like when it's turned into muscle memory. Level 2. Escalation. This is the point where Peter Parker stops fighting crime and starts fighting threats. The moral code is still intact. The restraint's still there. The quips haven't disappeared, but the margin for error is gone. At this level, Spider-Man isn't dealing with desperate muggers or random thugs anymore. He's facing superpowered opponents who can genuinely kill people if he doesn't end the fight quickly. So he recalibrates. Not to kill, not to maim, but to put you down hard enough that you can't get back up. This is Spider-Man actively adjusting his strength mid-fight, applying just enough force to knock someone unconscious without leaving life-altering damage behind. Level 2 is where Spider-Man can drop Rhino with a clean right hook. And this is without turning his skull into confetti. It's when he crashes the Green Goblin's glider mid-air and still has the presence of mind to fire a web line and make sure Norman doesn't fall to his death. That's the key difference. At level 2, Spider-Man is fighting harder, but he's also thinking faster. Because Peter knows the truth most villains never consider. A single unchecked punch from him could end the fight permanently, and he refuses to cross that line. Level 2 proves something crucial about Spider-Man's strength. It isn't just powerful, it's layered. And every layer exists because Peter Parker is constantly choosing restraint, even when the people he's fighting absolutely don't deserve it. Level 3, when the anger leaks through. The thing about Spider-Man is that with great power comes great responsibility. It isn't just a lesson, it's a containment system. It's the shell that separates Spider-Man from becoming something far closer to Punisher than Captain America. But that shell isn't unbreakable. Every once in a while, a villain pushes too far. They hit a nerve. They cross a line Spider-Man doesn't forgive easily. And when the trauma, frustration, and anger Peter Parker carries finally starts to leak out, that's level 3. Because level 3 is the first time Spider-Man's strength is driven by emotion, not calibration. In levels 1 and 2, Peter is constantly pulling his punches. Here, he hesitates, and that hesitation costs him control. His strikes stop being controlled knockouts and start becoming fight-ending blows. Not lethal, but strong enough to send a clear message. This isn't a game. The quips disappear, the showmanship vanishes, and the fight becomes brutally direct. But here's what still makes this Spider-Man and not something worse. At the very last moment, he stops. Just before things get too far, Peter pulls himself back. He remembers who he is. He reasserts control. The defining example of level 3 comes from Back in Black when Wilson Fisk's actions leave Aunt May fighting for her life. When Peter confronts Kingpin, it isn't a superhero fight, it's a warning. And the only reason Fisk walks away is because Spider-Man chooses not to cross that final line. This level is when street-level criminals start running on sight. It's when villains realize Spider-Man isn't joking anymore. And it's when everyone involved understands the same terrifying truth. Spider-Man isn't weak because he holds back. He's dangerous because he doesn't always have to. Level 4, a superior realization. Up until now, every level we talked about has been Peter Parker choosing restraint. But level 4 is different because it's the first time we see Spider-Man's strength without Peter Parker behind the wheel. We don't truly see this tier until Peter Parker is removed from the equation entirely and Otto Octavius takes control of his body as the superior Spider-Man. And the realization hits Otto like a freight train. Peter Parker wasn't weak, he wasn't soft, he wasn't barely scraping by, he was holding back the entire time. For the first time, Otto experiences what Spider-Man's strength actually feels like when it's applied without Peter's moral brakes. And in that moment, Doc Ock understands something horrifying. Peter could have ended him at any point. He just chose not to. And that's what level 4 really is. Level 1 is Peter's personal baseline, but this level is Spider-Man's true default strength, the level the body itself is capable of when restraint is no longer instinctive. This is the tier that longtime fans point for vindication. The moment that proves Spider-Man has always been a physical monster hiding behind jokes and mercy. It's also at this level that forces skeptics to confront reality. Spider-Man can stand toe-to-toe with Marvel's most serious threats. Not by accident, but by choice. It took Peter Parker being gone for that truth to finally come out. Level 5, weaponizing Spidey's strength. If level 4 is when Otto Octavius learns how strong Spider-Man truly is, level 5 is when he decides to use that strength deliberately. Because Otto doesn't see Spider-Man's power as something to restrain, he sees it as a tool. As the superior Spider-Man, Otto applies intellect to strength in a way Peter Parker never would. Not out of cruelty, but out of conviction. In Otto's mind, Spider-Man's greatest failure was mercy. At this level, with great power comes great responsibility, stops meaning restraint and starts meaning maximum efficiency. Fights don't drag on, threats are neutralized immediately. Villains don't get second chances. This is Spider-Man using his strength with intent, not emotion, not hesitation, and not guilt. Otto treats Spider-Man's power like a scalpel instead of a safety net, applying exactly as much force as needed to permanently end a problem. And that's what makes level 5 unsettling, because nothing about it is sloppy, nothing about it is uncontrolled. It's clean, calculated, but final. The superhero community quickly realizes something uncomfortable. Spider-Man was never underpowered, he was self-limited, and with that limitation gone, the quips vanish. The theatrics disappear, and all that's left is results. Level 6, when the bloodlust takes over. This time, it isn't Otto Octavius behind the mask, it's Peter Parker. And that's what makes this level truly terrifying. Because this is what happens when Peter stops anchoring himself to great power, great responsibility, and starts anchoring to outcomes. At this tier, Spider-Man isn't trying to scare criminals, he's making sure they never get an opportunity to hurt someone again. This is Spider-Man deciding that mercy has become a liability. Unlike Otto, who used overwhelming force as a calculated necessity, Peter at level 6 treats finality as policy. And there's no rage here, no emotional spiral, just cold resolve. Street level threats cease to matter. Supervillains don't get dramatic back and forths. Fights end the moment Peter decides they should. And in this moment, the Marvel Universe realizes something deeply uncomfortable. Spider-Man is no longer operating on the same scale as street heroes. At this level, Peter's raw ability, capability rivals, and in some cases surpasses icons like Captain America and Iron Man, not because he has better tech or leadership, but because he's no longer limiting himself to the rules. This is the closest Spider-Man ever comes to becoming something like the Punisher, except with one terrifying difference. Frank Castle relies on weapons, Peter Parker is the weapon. Level 6 proves something fans often forget. Spider-Man was never a street-level hero by necessity. He chose to be one, and at this level, that choice is gone. And if you want to see what this actually looked like, Marvel showed us. In Spider-Man: The Spider's Shadow, Peter never removes the symbiote. Instead of rejecting it, he embraces what it offers: power without restraint, efficiency without hesitation, and solutions that don't leave room for repeat offenses. What's important here isn't the suit itself, it's what it removes. The symbiote strips away Peter's instinct to pull back. It quiets the voice reminding him to give people another chance. And once that voice is gone, Spider-Man stops behaving like a hero who reacts to crime and starts operating like someone who prevents it permanently. When Peter Parker decides restraint is no longer morally acceptable, nothing in the Marvel Universe is equipped to stop him, not other heroes, villains, or even his own conscience. That's the terrifying truth of this strength level. Spider-Man doesn't need corruption, mind control, or outside influence to become unstoppable. He only needs to stop believing in mercy. Level 7, when Spider-Man becomes inevitable. Level 7 isn't Spider-Man becoming a god. That's too easy. It's Spider-Man realizing he never needed to be one. This is the version of Peter Parker that appears between the panels of canon, not as a transformation, not as a suit, and not as a power-up, but as a state of understanding. At this level, Spider-Man stops measuring his strength in punches, feats, or how hard he can hit. He measures it in outcomes. We see this thinking as far back as Amazing Spider-Man 229 and 230, when Peter realizes Juggernaut can't be beaten, so he simply removes him from relevance. No rage, no escalation, just clarity. And we see it again in Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man 310, where Peter anticipates conflicts before they materialize, solving problems before they become fights. And we feel it throughout Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man when crime doesn't rise to meet Spider-Man because it knows better. At this level, Peter Parker no longer operates as a reactionary hero. He becomes a constant. Criminals don't test him, villains don't escalate around him, and threats don't get the luxury of becoming dramatic. This is Spider-Man with full awareness of what he is, a superhuman operating in a human world, who no longer defines himself by street-level limits, borrowed power, or moral guilt. He still chooses restraint, but now it's a choice, not a necessity, and that distinction changes everything. Because the strongest version of Spider-Man was never the one with cosmic power, or a symbiote, or reality-bending force. The strongest Spider-Man was the one who finally accepted that the world had already adapted around him, and that it functions because he's allowed it to. Spider-Man's greatest strength was never how hard he could hit, it was how long he convinced himself he didn't already have the power to end every fight before it began. And the scariest version of Spider-Man is the one the world no longer gets a chance to test.